Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Life of the Amazonia from Bad Comet. Life of the Amazonia is a 1 to 4 player bag building game in which players are trying to gather as many animals as possible while building out their home terrain in an effort of scoring as many points as possible by the end of the game. That's the basic idea. It's a bag builder with nature and animals and terrain and a dozen different actions. It's not a dozen, there's 8. There's 8 different actions. That's 4 shy of a dozen different actions. In any case, in the game, you're basically going to be dealing with bag building. You're going to start off with some prefabricated tokens over here, or a preset bag of tokens, and then you're going to go ahead and draw 5 tokens from your bag. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. That's 6 tokens. 6 tokens. There we go. We got our five tokens over here, and now we can spend these tokens on 8 different possible actions. Before we dive into the intricacies of the actions, the core thing to note is you have a terrain tile over here. You're going to be expanding that terrain tile with terrain tiles from a market over here, and you'll be gathering various animals and placing them down onto spots in terrain tiles in an effort to score based on how each animal scores. That's the core mechanic going on over here. There's a bunch of other ways to get points. So, for example, as you expand different areas over here, getting various trees or terrain tiles or aquatic flowers, you'll also get points at the end of the game for those as well. So there's a lot of other things to get points, but the core engine is gathering animals and trying to maximize those animal scoring based on your economy of actions. That's the core idea. So gather terrain, gather animal tiles, build as many points as possible. But with that, let's dive into a bit more nitty gritty. So for example, over here, right now, I don't have any red, and red is almost always a component, at least I think it's always a component to buy animals. You can see it requires 5 red, 5 food, and 2 water. Since I have no food, I'm not going to be buying animals this turn. The good news is I could be buying more tiles over here. You see, you have a whole market of tiles, and one of the 8 actions you can take is expanding your market of tiles. With me having 5 resources over here, I can go ahead and take a look and possibly buy this one over here. I'll buy this animal over here. It costs me 4, and I'm going to take this and add it to my boat over there, which effectively means it's being added to my bag when I shuffle. So now that 2 food tile, which will help me purchase animals, just cost me 4 over here. Now you can keep taking actions as long as you can spend your resources. So in general, you can spend resources, take actions, and you can hold over 1 resource from turn to turn. Based on this little track here, you can expand that to slowly go higher and higher until you can hold 3 resources turn to turn, but right now at the beginning of the game, you can hold over 1 of these turn to turn. So I need to find something else to do with these tiles. The good news is the starting cost on these tracks over here is 1. They'll get more expensive as you go higher in these tracks, but right now, my very first terrain tile, for my second action, I'm going to go ahead and move this up over here. I'm going to spend 1 food, one tree over here, dumping it over there. Keeping in mind when you spend things, it goes into your discard where it'll cycle back into your bag later. I'm going to then take one of these tiles over here. Let's gather this tile. No particular reason. I'm just teaching you the game over here. I'll align it with my board over here in whatever way that I think is the best for me. And then we'll go ahead and done. I've just bought a tile to expand my grid. And then lastly, I'll go ahead and buy an aquatic flower. So I'm going to take this, spend this over here, bump myself up over there, buying an aquatic flower, and I'm going to place it over a bonus. In this case, the bonus I'm going to place it on is this one, which will give me a wild sea token that I can use for later. And then this I'll hold and save for the next round. That would be an example turn in which you've just seen 3 different actions. You've seen me buy a new token to add to my bag. You saw me buy a new terrain tile, and you saw me buy an aquatic flower. Those are 3 of the 8 actions. The remaining 5 actions you can take is you can go ahead and buy a tree over here, so aquatic flower and terrain, but you can buy trees which can go on terrains as well. That's going to be action 4. Action 5 is going to be using one of these bonuses over here where you can pay money to use a bonus. So you, for instance, removing a tile from the game or gathering different bonus tiles over here. That's action 5. Action 6 is going to be expanding your storage over here where you can pay 2 and then 4 to be able to move up how many tiles you can hold over round to round, which is really helpful. That gives you a lot more flexibility when you don't get a good hand. Action 6 is going to be buying one of these cards over here. We have 2 rows of cards, instant use cards over here, followed by cards over here that will give you different scoring opportunities. You can only have 4 of these, but you want to make sure not to forget those. Those will give you a lot of extra scoring. If other players neglect those and you get them, there's a decent chance you're winning. And then lastly, action 8 is going to be actually buying an animal, which we didn't see done, but you heard me talk about, which is once things cycle back into the bag. In fact, let's go ahead and take a second turn. Let's go ahead and draw 5 tiles in the bag for our second turn over here. Let's see what we got. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here we go. For over here, we got these. So we got our 2 over here. We have our money. And then right now, for example, I can go ahead, use my sea token as a wild, spend my 2 money. The sea token does go back to the pool. It does not go into your boat. And I'm going to go ahead and buy a leaf frog. I'm going to take that leaf frog. I'm going to put it next to me aquatic flower because leaf frogs will score 4 points for each pairing of a leaf frog and an aquatic flower. So trying to pair up as many leaf frogs as possible around those aquatic flowers, that's going to be a nice strong way to get extra points. And the aquatic flowers in general will help you go up in this track where you'll get points depending on how high you go. In general, trees and aquatic flowers are going to give you points for every single move up, versus the terrain tiles only give you points at the very end over here if you've really fully built out your terrain. That's basically how you play the game. you have 8 possible actions, 8 different things you can do with your tokens, buying animals, buying 4 different types of terrain, well, the terrain, the aquatic, and the trees, buying new tokens, bonus actions, buying the new cards over there, and then I forgot the other ones, but I covered them all, so hopefully you know or follow what happened over there. Now, the general idea is you're going to keep doing this until enough animals are depleted. The animals in the pool for each card are equal to the player count, and that, well, not equal to the player count, are determined by the player count. So, for example, these caimans over here are player count plus 2, which I think I should have one more over here. I think I should have one more over here. Over here we have player count times 3. Over here we have player count plus 1. So you're going to be putting different amounts of animals in the supply depending on the player count. And once these cards are depleted, once all the frogs are depleted, we'll go ahead and we'll move that card and we'll just put a little depleted token. And when enough of those are done, the game will end. Game end will trigger, and players will go ahead and score based on all the things they've done throughout the game. So once again, that's Life of the Amazonia. It is a bag building game in which you're going to be gathering various animals, putting them into terrain, expanding your terrain, gathering trees and aquatic flowers, trying to weed your bag from tokens that won't help you, trying to buy new tokens that will help you as you come up with the best bag building engine. And one last thing before we move on to the review, which is special animals. Well, I guess two last things. You have unique special animals which players are going to be dealt at the beginning of the game that give them their own unique animal, their own unique way, the way they go on the terrain. By the way, one thing I forgot to tell you, the animals tell you in the corner where they can go. So for example, that leaf frog cannot go on forest, it can go on either sand or on water as shown in the corner. So you have your own special animal over here, which gives you a bonus once you build it. It doesn't really cost anything, but it needs a specific grouping of terrain, and it has specific rules as to how it's placed, but then I'll give you a bonus. And then lastly, there are 4 different sets of these animals. In other words, there are 4 full different sets, and you can combine and mix and match. So for example, right now, if I wanted to, I can go ahead and flip this tamarin to the side, and we have an entirely different configuration to play with, a whole bunch of the A side and a B side. You can work with all the A's, all the B's, all the C's, and all the D's, or you can just mix and match to your heart's content to come up with the grouping of animals that you want in your game. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the review, starting off with ease of play. Rulebook is a little on the longer side compared to the actual weight of the game. I don't know if I found it the most intuitive, but I don't think the game itself is actually that complicated. I just think there's a lot to go through. So I'd put it as it felt a little bit more complicated than it needed to be, but overall it wasn't a bad rulebook. Game time comes in at roughly an hour. Again, it's going to depend on player count and how slow you are as far as how AP prone you are as players, but I'd say roughly an hour for a game. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which in general the game starts with a great table presence. From the fact that you're going to be building out your little terrain areas over here, each player building out their own area, from the trees you're going to be slowly putting onto them, from the little 3D tableau over here that's going to track all the various things over there. It starts off with a great looking game visually, as well as a great table presence from the 3D pieces. But then on top of that, because the game looking good is not nearly enough, on top of that, the gameplay is highly rewarding in terms of the animal combinations and scoring and bag building that all combine. I like a good deck builder. Take that back. I love a good deck builder. I find deck building to be one of my favorite mechanics as you build and develop your own destiny as you go, and this game absolutely has that as you build and develop your own bag, trying to find your pathways forward. Getting more money will help you build your bag faster. Diving into those animals will help you start to get a head start on those animals. Getting a lot of water might be able to help you with these one-time use cards and these scoring cards, and everything's going to have a way that is good for you in a way that helps you, but trying to combine the intricacies of bag building combined with the high variability of different animals and the ways they're going to score is going to produce a different engine every single time. It's going to produce a different puzzle and a different challenge and a different way to min-max or optimize around that, and what the players do at the table matters. The limited pool of animals, because there are a limited pool of animals, these limited pools really define what you can do, and it stops you from being able to sit there and say, well, I'm going to build my engine around a giant otter strategy and get 5 giant otters, because you won't. You're going to get a handful of giant otters, and other players taking those will also limit even further what you can do. And so seeing what other players go for is also a part of your strategy, or should be a part of your strategy as you play through this game. And that high variability from the unique creature you're going to get, from the 4 sets of creatures you have on the board, from the way you're going to build your bag, all of that is going to give you a lot of gameplay replayability to this engine, utilizing the core set of rules, but finding different ways to try to leverage one thing differently than another. Oh, look, in this game, the jaguars are going to pair well with the woodpeckers, so if I try to get a few of those on those, and then pivot to a few macaws once the woodpeckers run out, that's going to be a different strategy every single time. If you've played games like Dominion, if you have that, how do I make it all work and mix and match together to be able to figure out my unique puzzle and my unique way forward, this game has that with a a solid degree of bag building and card combinations, and the extra, 8 actions you have as far as the ways to move up this tracks and maximize those points and get rewards along the way, from the way you have these scoring cards over here and these one-time use cards. All of it produces just a lot of gameplay with a fairly simple approach to it, especially if you are already familiar with bag building, but nonetheless a very rewarding, highly variable approach to this game. As far as what I don't like in the game, first thing I'll say is that shedding your tokens seems almost game-breaking essential. Now don't get me wrong, I am coming into this as someone who, whenever I play any bag building game, my favorite bag builder or deck builder, my favorite thing to do is to get rid of all my weak cards as fast as possible, so I'm running with a very quick, very fast-paced engine. But one of the things I like about a lot of different games, from the Quest of El Dorado to Dominion to any number of different games, is very often weeding your deck is a strategy, but it's not the be-all and end-all. You have to balance the time it takes to weed your deck with the length of the game, with how important everything is, and so very often it is an important strategy to be mindful of, but it's not always essential. It is one strategy at your disposal. And this might be too early for me to say with Life of the Amazonia. Again, at the end of the day, there's a difference between playing this game a few times and playing this game 50 times, 100 times, or whatever it is. Personally, from my plays of the game, it does seem like shedding your starter tokens as fast as possible isn't so much a strategy, but straight up essential, just based on, I would say, I guess my experience here is the fact that, like I said already, I tend to prefer that as an activity. I tend to prefer shedding my lower tokens or lower cards in any game. But in many games, I don't necessarily win them. I do fine, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, it is what it is. But in this game, because I like doing that, and because every single game I've done that, every game where I've done that and other players haven't, there's been a wide disparity in how much I actually won in those games. So my biggest complaint so far is just that shedding your lower tokens doesn't feel like an option. It feels like an essential component to being eligible for victory, if that makes sense. I'll say, similarly, improving your backpack seems essential as well. And the tricky part is here is this isn't even that expensive, so it feels like something you just have to do at early on in the game to be able to maximize your engine and your flexibility with getting a bad hand. So again, it's another thing that doesn't feel like an option, but feels like essential. And again, you could argue that that's not a big deal. If you know these things are essential, it is what it is. For me, I like it when games give me choices, not things I have to get done regardless. And then lastly, I'll say that the game does have a little bit of a slow start and a little bit of a fast end, meaning generally the way this game ramps up is as you're getting your bag moving, as you're weeding your tokens, as you're getting things done, it has a little bit of a slower start as things just aren't moving that quickly. Then you get to a nice healthy mid-game, and then suddenly the game ends almost right away. And so that does have that kind of arc to it. Once you know to expect it, that's the least of the issues, but something to be mindful of. You might not enjoy that. As far as I can see others not liking, first of all, the waterfall does not fit nicely in the box. This has to be disassembled every single time. Not the biggest deal, so I don't know if it's not a big deal. It assembles pretty quickly, but if you don't like that kind of thing, it doesn't fit great in the box. I'll also say that the unique animals, I don't know if I'm strongly sure that they are balanced. Some of these just seem stronger than others, so it's just again, not a big a deal to me, but it is something to be mindful of. And the last I'll say, you kind of have to give up being able to do everything or track everything in the game. There's too much information going on in this game. There's too much information from over here, from these scoring cards, from the way these tracks score, from all these animals and the different things they do. If you are diving into this game, you kind of want to just pick things that you're doing and then just play it out from there. Occasionally you'll notice, oh, look at that card, that goes nicely in my strategy. Great, you've learned something for the next game. Don't try to absorb all the information. There's just too many things going on in your first play. It will get easier with subsequent plays, but at first it's definitely can be an overwhelming experience. As far as final thoughts on Life of the Amazonia, I really like this game. I overall was very impressed by this one. This one gave me bag building with a variable scoring engine that gives you a lot of things to consider and a lot of different ways to approach the puzzle. And overall, I've had a lot of fun with this one and plan to continue to dive in as well. For me, this is a 4 out of 5. A lot of strong things, a few small complaints about it, but overall, a very pleasant gaming experience from Bad Comet. As far as other game recommendations, first of all, I already recommended Dominion over here. I already mentioned Dominion. Dominion is going to be another deck building game. To me, one of my favorite deck building games that will give you a high degree of variability with a different combination of cards, giving you a different puzzle every single time you play. And then lastly, Cascadia, because honestly, I kind of feel like this game feels like a cross between Dominion and Cascadia brought to your game table. Both of those are fantastic games in their own right, and this definitely speaks to elements of both of those games. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.